Okay, boys, the album OK Computer, you went off to sort of, I don't know, get your heads together in the country in true traffic style or whatever, and just get away from where it was all happening. What was so special about the place you recorded it in, or did it have anything special about it?
You had loads special about it. I mean, the trouble is when you start talking about it, it all sounds a bit sort of, as you say, Spinal Tap, or it sounds a bit 70s rock, but it did have a lot of things about it. I mean, I think, you know, a lot of the album was really about exactly where we'd been, sort of taking snapshots and then going to somewhere which was so different to everything we'd ever experienced ever. You know, it was incredibly sort of, it made you realise sort of how powerful the songs were, which is kind of what we needed at that point. And it was in a valley that it was 15th century. Was it King Henry the what's name's? One of the wives had died there in childbirth very nastily, and she was still hanging around. And there were several other people hanging around, and it was in a big valley, and time sort of just didn't seem to mean anything. You'd be there. I mean, we'd have friends who'd come over and they'd come and they'd sit down and have a cup of coffee, and it'd be 5 hours later, they'd be like, I better go then, you know, and everything just went like that. Time just completely warped. It was really weird.
So does it make a difference then? Like, I mean, did you have to sort of stop being so precious in some ways, bring the songs out, play them live, and then when you bring them back, it's a completely different thing altogether?
Yeah, what was good about the house in a way was what wasn't there. There weren't, you know, White Snake gold discs on the wall, and wasn't the body odour of the previous band lingering in the halls like there is usually in studios, and it was less like a laboratory. And
yeah, it was a really free space. We felt like we could do anything we wanted, and if we had a bad day and nothing was happening, it was like, well, that doesn't matter, you know. Yeah. The clock's not really ticking, you know. And to us, that made just all the difference. That's what we were looking for.
And was it that much different then than recording the previous two albums? It was just a nicer way to do it. In other words, would album number 4 maybe be done in the same way?
I think it was, but I mean, we still went through the same rubbish that we had with the last album, so I don't think we've found a, you know, an easy way to record.
I don't think you do find an easy way to record. I mean, I also think that if we wanted to go and do the same thing again, we couldn't do it either.
Yeah.
Because you know, it just wouldn't happen, you know. That was sort of one-off experience. We sort of get off in one-off experiences, like everybody really. It's like travelling. It's sort of an extension of touring, actually, sadly. The fact that you can just go around to other places and we have all this stuff in boxes and we just take it out of the boxes, plug it in, and here we are. So I don't know.
Well, before you went in, you did have a few songs which you had been playing live anyway. So was it nice to know that at least there was a few, like for instance, like you had No Surprises, The Paranoid Android and Climbing Up the Walls, which you had done live. So did you feel as though you had a head start even before you went in, say compared to Pablo Honey or compared to the Bends?
I suppose so, but I mean, I think since our first album, we've been trying to get away from that whole theory of, oh, well, we'll just go in and set up and play the songs like we do live, and then it's finished. We wanted to make a studio album. We like studios. It's not. We're not scared of them anymore.
I'd always gone on about that, how that wasn't possible.
Yeah, exactly.
That recording was a different thing. Blah blah blah. And we really wanted to get back to sort of the way that we recorded first when we first ever started, which was like 4-track around his house.
Yeah.
And the idea that you just respond to that. You don't sort of go and say, we're a live band, we want to make it sound live. Because you'll always be disappointed.
But did you do the recording in such a way that maybe it wasn't headphones, it was more monitors, just to see, like, this is a live feel, let's see what happens here?
Yeah, I think that you've got to divide playing together and listening to one another and getting the sound of a band playing in a room, which we didn't want to do. But we did want to be reacting with each other and recording that. So.
It was actually sort of down to the thing of jazz, the way they do jazz records or the Blue Note records. The most exciting thing about that is just the fact that you know that there's no overdubs, and you know that whatever they played there and then was what was kept.
We did. I mean, it can be demonstrated that we had, for the first album especially, we had days and days of listening to bass drums and snares. And this time we had days and days of listening to takes of the same song, which in a way is just as soul destroying, but it's at least you feel like you're getting somewhere. And when you find the best take, then that is the version that people are going to hear, pretty much.
Right, but like, does that live thing sort some things out? I mean, one of the, like, so one of the reasons that you do, I mean, not just live in the studio, I mean, one of the reasons why you might have actually gone on the road to do the Alanis Morissette tour is purely to sort of get any sort of whatever out of the system, and let's see what happens when you come back. It was like, you did the tour to do the album.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the songs get better faster when you're touring. Yeah. Out of fear, mainly.
It was all getting a bit wild, really, because when we started doing the album, I mean, when we finished doing the bends, it was sort of, okay, we can literally do what we want, and this is what we always wanted.
Yeah.
And we couldn't get started. It was the sort of Stone Roses phenomena where you kind of expect it to be good, you want it to be good, but you don't know where to start. And the best place to start really is in front of, you know, 20,000 Alanis Morissette's fans who don't really care what you're doing, and that way you've got to get it right.
Yeah, but one of the things about that also is that you didn't have a producer. It might be nice to have a sixth voice, no?
Well, we did, really. I mean, we did, because Nigel Godrich, who co-produced it, he was sort of like, he ended up doing the same role as John Leckie, which was just basically placating everybody and
Dad.
Yeah, basically, you know, we'd be throwing strops and throwing things at each other, and he was like, okay, we're going to calm down, we're going to go out, we're going to not work today, or you know, just something to do that, because we work really well together, the five of us, but he was sort of just there to be the voice of the mixing desk and the tape recorder, and sort of say, you know, hello, stop misbehaving.
Right.
Which was quite weird for him.
Okay, well, you mentioned the house, say, in terms of, say, maybe one of Henry's wives or whatever dying in childbirth, etc. I mean, when you came back from the madness of being around the world, what was the feeling like in a place like that? Was it a nice feeling? Was it a tranquil feeling? Or was it a scary feeling? Because you did mention Ghost in the Machine there, sort of, in terms of something going on.
Yeah, there was.
It sounds like it was kind of scary.
It was. Well, he's the skeptic, and I'm not. And we sort of joked about it for the first 2 weeks, but I think old places, you know, old stones like that, they remember things, you know.
Yeah.
And none of us saw anything, but I had nights. Well, I had most nights I tried to stay up till it was dawn because I couldn't sleep, and that was probably me being paranoid. But I don't think it was. I tried not to be. I tried going to bed stone cold sober, and it didn't help. That's probably why the songs are all that tempo that they are, because Tom kept us awake till 7 every night because he couldn't sleep, and we were sort of, Phil was drumming slow and slow, starting to explain to it.
Well, then, did it do something to the album, do you think, in some ways, in that, like, it is kind of otherworldly in terms of just, when you hear it for the first few times, it feels kind of, dare I say, even haunted in some ways.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. I mean, it beats me why, you know, but it is. I mean, it beats me why it would work like that, but I mean, the microphones picked up on the atmosphere, and that was that, really. I've heard some wacky stories about people, you know, miking up empty rooms and blah, 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 and most of the time it doesn't work, but it sort of really worked by accident this time.
Did you ever feel, I mean, I know there's no pressure because you were allowed to do what you wanted to do at this stage. There was never a question of a Benz 2 as such in any level at all. I mean, for instance, like the Benz it didn't really seem to have a standout, whatever. There was 6 like huge singles off it, say. So in one way, in effect, it's nearly like already it's like a Radiohead greatest hits in some ways. But on that level, if this was never going to be like that, this was always going to be a different album, and to hell with being, if you like, commercial.
Yeah, I mean, we were supposedly set up for the big third crossover commercial album. But a lot of raised eyebrows. Yeah, the feeling among the five of us was that we had to do a record that was good enough to be liked by the people who bought the bands. Yeah. And that's sort of as far as it went.
But also, I mean, our mindset was completely different. You know, the things we were listening to were completely different. The places that we'd gone to were, you know, were different. We'd had totally different experiences. There was just no way that, you know, the bands just came from somewhere else, you know, and I don't know, we just, I also don't think it's actually that much of a difficult record. I think you're right, it's haunted, but it's just not, like, it's not straight ahead. It's not straight ahead, but I mean, I suppose it's because we've heard all the songs 5 billion times, but to us they're pretty simple.
Well, was there ever a simple quest of just trying to get the same emotion as the bands, but just doing it in a completely different way?
Oh, all the way, well, there's that constant insecurity that you feel that is the only emotion you can have, like that's the only one you're good at, so everything is in reference to it. But the way I personally dealt with that is the thing that annoyed me about the bends that I felt at the end of the bends, that I could have sung that way and I could have been singing about fish and chips and it would have still sounded emotional, which is sort of, after a while it's quite restricting because you kind of think everyone expecting you to sing from that emotional register and it's kind of boring to be right in doing that. So for this one it was sort of every song was like, right, different voice, different angle, because I didn't feel like I was writing about myself anyway. I felt I was like absorbing external stuff.
Do you ever feel that when an album is finished, that the work is finished, or there's always something? I mean, obviously you've got to go and talk about the album maybe, or else you've got to go and tour or whatever. But I suppose, what about the video? I mean, like, the video for Paranoid Android is pretty bizarre, sort of graphic violence, sexual tension in it, I don't know, all around abstract confusion. What happens? Is it all over? You say, oh no, we've got to put pictures to this, and we've got to do something, or we've got to think of an idea.
It was much cooler this time, like say, because the artwork was much cooler because Stanley Don was the guy who was doing the artwork with us while we were there. And we had like one computer constantly doing artwork and things, and one computer on the net and one computer doing sound editing and things. And it was just more of a project because it wasn't just a case of clocking in at midday and recording some sound for a few hours and going home. The tape machine had Stanley next to it with his computer doing and saying, this might be the cover, what do you think? And we're doing images and someone else is like going through Radiohead chat rooms and just sort of nosing around and finding out what's happening. So it was like I thought it was a project, it wasn't just it was mastered. It was like quite stressful because that was an incredibly stressful period, but what felt really good was having finished it and not being able to do anything more to it. And so just do all the nice packaging stuff. Because I really love that stuff. I think it's cool, you know. I used to, when we first started in the first time, we had no control over any of it. It was like, we walked into the office one day and looked at something and said, this is the artwork, and we're like, okay. And, you know, and it just come from art colleagues and I expected to have some involvement in it. And everyone was like, oh no, it'll be too stressful, you can't deal with it. You go off and do a pop star. And I was like, having none of that when we did the band. But, you know, and with this, we Stanley and me were just really happy involved in all of it all the time. And it's really exciting. And then the videos were just, well, you know, no knowledge of videos, so I look at it like, you don't actually have that much involvement, it's just a privilege to see someone take the thing off and do what they want with it.
Pablo Honey sold about 1.5 million copies in the States. Do you think that people in the States just didn't get the band? I mean, as they didn't understand.
No, I don't think that. No, I think that because they did. I mean, they did. It just the radio stations don't get it. That's all. And we're having the same thing this time. I mean, not surprisingly.
There's just more in the way in America between you and people hearing your record, that the ones that had it were as into it as anyone else.
Yeah. Back to the days of the little bags of cocaine, I say.
Okay, well now hold on. So you just said there they didn't get this. At least I'm probably not going to get this one either. Not surprisingly. There's nothing willful about this album, is there? That like, hold on a second, that might be too commercial. That might get played in the daytime radio. Change that. Make it.
We could have done happily done a very good album,
but we kind of didn't.
Do you fear success? I mean, is there sort of a trepidation of the whole thing? I mean, this album now has been praised as the album of the year.
Well, you know, in 2 weeks' time it'll be the Prodigy, and then it'll be the Oasis. It will, honestly.
Well, at the end of the year, when every single one of the music comics has its top 100 albums of the year, are you telling me that the OK Computer is not going to be in the top 3 of every year?
Maybe.
Ben didn't get great reviews when it came out, and then it was, but then a year later it was, you know, album of the year. And this is getting good reviews now, so maybe it won't be. I don't know, you just can't trust.
You don't, I mean, it's like Colin said last night, let's just see if people are still buying it in 6 months, you know.
Yeah.
But not that we're not like enjoying the moment or anything, you know. I've got a bottle of champagne in my room.
It's a Radiohead thing, you know. We kind of concentrate on bad reviews instead of good ones. You believe them. They're more believable to you, I think.
Which I think is actually rubbish.
Yeah, it is.
I think we should get a life and start enjoying it.
Yeah, be like framing them.
Yeah, you know, there is one possibility that the album mightn't sell to a huge audience out there that buys very trendy to elite or whatever the word is. Because, like, they just say, that single's on it, that single's on it, that single's, oh yeah, I'll buy that. Whereas, like, there aren't, like, massive radio-friendly singles necessarily in this album.
No, I suppose not, but, I mean, I don't know, I kind of think that's not true. I mean,
you know, what the way radio is, though, you know?
Yeah, but that's sort of not our problem.
Yeah,
you know? I mean, when we were doing the bands, we were thinking about it. We were thinking, well, we're going to have to go out and play this live, blah, blah, blah. We're going to have to play this to the Mafias, oh, God, they might not like it, oh, blah, blah, oh, dear, America. And this time it was like, we spent such a long time and such amount of effort getting to the point where nothing like that was relevant.
Like Tom was saying earlier, we did the Cold Creep tours, and we sort of eliminated a section of our audience, and now it feels like that, you know, that they're all pretty cool. It's quite sort of encouraging, and we're just doing a record for that group of people, and it's
okay. If you did the Alanis Morissette tour, as I said there, I claimed that you did it maybe just to get the OK Computer album seen to yourselves in a different way, all the new songs in a different way, and see what you do when you brought it to that big house. What about touring with REM? I mean, these guys were the biggest thing in the world when you were touring with them, and they seemed to be, and they still seem to be, about as down to earth as be damned, right? Now, did you sort of look at that and say, well, great, you know, therefore it is possible to get to the very top, and it is possible to be cool?
And it's possible to still be a band. I mean, that's what surprised me. I'd kind of decided, right, they're not going to be doing any sound checks, they're not going to be doing any new songs, but instead they were kind of a year into the tour, and they were still sound checking brand new songs, you know, every day for an hour, and just it was,
you know, a lot of OK Computer is us, you know, in this white middle class boys actually dawning on them that actually maybe it's possible, actually maybe we could survive, actually maybe we could enjoy this. You know, and it formed a really large part of the atmosphere of the record. You know, like the sort of anything is possible.
What about the fact that when a band is really big and maybe has something to say to its fans in terms of getting involved in things, whatever, Greenpeace, whatever it happens to be. Now, one of the things that REM did, they might have had 10 stalls around the place. At one stage during the gig, Michael Stipe would say, check out the stalls, and then leave it at that, without necessarily preaching with a white flag on the stage all the time about it, or not, without necessarily even having it in the lyrics. It's like a nice sort of way to do it. You can just have it there at the side. Is that the way you might like to do something like that, rather than tell people what to do? Like invite people into your game.
Yeah, I think the whole point of it is that you know what the media finds newsworthy is so mind-bogglingly inane when all these things go on, and you are one of the items that they find newsworthy if you drop your pants in public or whatever. So if you are going to drop your pants in public, you know, have a little thing on the back. I'll stop that now. Go on for.
Pardon?
But if people are going to, you know, be seeing you in that way, then you should use and abuse it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, be knowledgeable about your ignorance as well.
Yeah.
You know, be honest about your ignorance.
Because like Ed was saying to me one time last year, he said something along the lines of, look, one of the first times he ever really heard about amnesty or whatever was watching the big red noses in the Secret Policeman's Ball. Like, I mean, something as mundane as that can introduce so many people to so many things. I mean, even like an awful lot of people, an awful lot of the Manic Street Preachers' early albums had an awful lot of very highfalutin philosophical stuff on them in terms of what books to read and that. And I met plenty of people who probably would never have read those.
Absolutely.
They saw them through Manic Street Preachers.
Yeah.
You sort of go, well, maybe rock bands can do something.
Yeah, and the thing is that rock bands are usually a distillation of those things anyway, so it is important that whether they be artists or political issues or whatever, those things actually involve the psyche of the band anyway. So it's important that people know about them, you know?
Yeah.
It's important that people to know about what you read or what you listen to. It's sort of a big deal because, you know, pop bands are usually like a distillation of all those things into something that's vaguely your own, but basically you're absorbing other things all the time. You know, it's really important.
Like, for instance, R.E.M. on the tour would be there every night, and every single night you played, they'd be there at the side of the stage watching the band. Do you ever think even that's pretty good too? Because that's kind of, I mean, like, these guys are all friends, which is a very important thing. You guys were all friends as well. I think that's important that you didn't have to put an ad in the music paper saying guitarist wanted kind of...
I don't think we could do that.
Yeah.
I just don't think we could do it. I mean, it's a lot of what I think a lot of what we realised this time round was the way that you personally, just simply having played for a long time together, you know, in various rooms and whatever, it sort of makes a big difference. And there's also that thing where you finish a record and you kind of stop listening to other music because it kind of confuses you. So, but then you finish and you feel like you've done your bit, and then you go out and you just totally fall in love with other music again. You know, and it's like sort of R.E.M. standing watching the bands that support them at the side of the stage, and I always thought that was a bit like, well, that's a bit weird, isn't it? You know, aren't they a bit keen? Aren't they a bit mad or something?
Yeah.
But actually, I totally understand it because it's that thing of falling in love with music. And you do, because every time you do something you're proud of, you can rest for a bit and go out and just find new stuff and, you know.
Well, what kind of music did you fall in love with, say, between 1885 or even past that with the On a Friday band, which is what you called yourself before Radiohead? What kind of music were you listening to? What kind of music, like, did you go out searching for certain stuff, or did you just, whatever was on the radio you took?
What, around then?
Yeah.
We were on to Pixies in the Fall, weren't we?
Pixies in the Fall.
The Pixies in the Fall and
I remember one moment of driving to a rehearsal when I was about 15, 16, and Tom put on a tape of Pixies Doolittle and played a song called Dead and said, we should sound like this. And that was a real summit.
Did I?
Yeah.
Dead by the Pixies.
Yeah, it's a great song.
Yeah.
It didn't work though, really. But anyway.
Oh, I saw that. I saw them play that once in Cardiff, and people came away from the front of the stage with blood all over their faces. Weirdest thing I'd ever seen.
what about playing live then to like a huge audience as opposed to the small one? Did you get anything even there REM-wise and say, look, you should treat every gig on the stage in some ways as terms of this is just another gig? Or do you try and say, wait a minute, there's at least 50,000 or 14,000 at the back that maybe can't see us properly, so you think maybe I should project more?
I find it really... it's like anything, it's like sex. You can't make it get better. It gets better by you relaxing. And that's like being a singer.
But is it the fact that like it's intensely lost in the song, so it doesn't matter if there's 10 people out there or 50,000 people out there?
It's kind of like, it's like videos. It's our attitude to doing videos. It's like, there was a time when all bands were saying, oh, I hate doing videos, but we have to do them, so we'll do them. And you get people who say, oh, we have to play on the big stages, but we hate it.
Yeah.
And that's a similar attitude. We're all up for the trying it and doing all we can to make it good.
But I mean, it was when we finished the record, we were having all these meetings and all of like, booking the shows and like, how do we deal with this? And I think it was only about 3 weeks ago that I suddenly got cool the idea, and it was just the idea of making it an event. And there's it's band playing on the stage, but I'm here with all my mates as well, and there's that thing of all the people in the same room at the same time feeling the same thing, which is which is really a good thing. It's sort of, if it's working, it's something that people always remember.
Yeah. Right.
So, I mean, I've not really watched many stadium gigs that I've enjoyed, and one I enjoyed was one with U2 in Cardiff Arms Park, and sometimes it was a bit random because say that they weren't playing one song right or whatever, and then sometimes you have this thing where you can just tell that absolutely everybody, like 30,000 people, all at the same tour, all feel exactly the same thing. It's mind-blowing. It's amazing. What's wrong with it? There's nothing wrong with it.
Okay, well then, to go from one step and to go back to what I was saying earlier about this fame thing, I mean, do you think you have a fear of it or just a healthy disrespect of it?
Disrespect, but fear of people coming around my house.
Right. And the importance of having at least a semblance of normal life.
Yes.
That'll be a Michael Stipe thing as well. You just have to sort of concentrate on something that makes you feel like I'm just, I'm a human being as opposed to this. And it's that difficult to maintain.
It is when all your mates are ringing up asking for Glastonbury tickets.
Yeah, right. What about the fans themselves then? Do you think if I could say the worst thing about you is that you might be a bit of a worrier, do you think the fans of Radiohead are kind of obsessive?
I don't think they are. I don't think they are half as much as they used to be, which is brilliant.
Right, yeah.
I think there was a really unhealthy period of people, just people getting the wrong end of the stick, which is fair enough. But what I really like about it is the fact that I think that everybody who writes to us has that they can sort of see that there's a sense of humour.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, and it's sort of something that is sort of underwriting everything really, and it's sort of essential. I mean, it sounds really stupid to say it cold like that, but I think that, I think that this album is really, really funny at points as well. Well, it makes me laugh, but then maybe I've just got a silly sense of humour. But
so then, like, the reaction you get to it is very important, and the motivation for all of this is the reaction you get plus the making of the music. That's enough. Is that enough, Johnny?
Go on, that's your one.
Well, what are we doing it for?
Yeah.
Well, we're not doing it because we're just doing music for the five of us, and if anybody likes it, that's a bonus. But basically, it's very far removed from that. I always hate it when bands say that.
Right.
It's always a lie.
Like I said, we're doing it for what we believe our audience to be like.
Yeah.
And you sort of assume it's like...
And for us.
Yeah,
But at the same
obviously.
time.
But you assume that it's the people who like you are like you and your friends. And when you excitedly play new recordings to friends in Oxford, you sort of hope that it's like that for everybody else.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, sure. But like, whatever about you guitaring away, what about you up there with nothing but the microphone? Well, you do hit the guitar, of course, sometimes, but I mean, with the microphone, I mean, is it that you create another Thom Yorke? Is it that there are two, and the one up on stage is not necessarily the one that these guys see? And that one of the great protection things that you have, the great protection pad is a second Thom Yorke.
Well, if there was just two, it would be all right. But there's about 8 or 9.
That's true.
And a couple of them are quite complete arseholes. But some of them are quite nice.
Well, then, do you ever worry about, like, I mean, that it could actually, the fame thing could actually affect you? I mean, like, could affect your mental health, let alone anything else in terms of the physical exhaustion.
I'm reading lots of books on mental health at the moment, so that's a way of...
Where is that now, Tom?
Just so I know if it ever crops up.
Very good. There was a description of the band that said that you're insular, posh, and irrationally paranoid. I mean, you're posher than your average band, whether you like it or not. You just said middle class Oxford. That sort of knocks out Slaughter and the Dogs, anyway.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you went to college. You read books.
Yeah, apparently.
A lot of them don't. Do you see yourself as being different than a lot of others, even those that you are? I mean, there's this thing they're talking about now, New Grave, which is just like a fleeting thing for a month maybe. But they've roped you in with Manson and another 5 or 6 bands.
No, they roped us in with the Manics and we were fine with that, and everybody else went...
Fine. It's okay with the Manics.
Yeah.
What about Massive Attack? Is there some talk of collaboration music-wise?
Yes. Soon, when we get it together.
Right.
When
And what about the Velvet Goldmine? Is that just a nice thing to do, a different project on the side?
Yeah, I can't see us doing that kind of thing often. It was more kind of, I was excited about the chance to meet Bernard Butler. It's one of the main reasons I wanted to do it.
What is it exactly? Is Michael Stipe producing that?
He was sitting in the corner shouting,
It's his money.
shouting, "That's cool," occasionally. He was there for the vibes.
And what is it?
It's some Roxy Music covers we did of some really early, old, obscure, peculiar glam stuff.
Oh.
And we just sort of
It's cool.
did versions of it.
2HB, one of the great songs. The last track side one of the first Roxy album.
And we actually got, what's his name? The guy who plays sax in
Andy Mackey.
Yeah, he played all the saxes on
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's pretty good, yeah. Now, does it go, how far does it go up Roxy-wise? Did it go to the second album?
It was the third album, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Bittersweet on the third album. Country Life.
All right, yeah, that's the third one. Was a Song for Europe is on that stuff.
Yeah, we didn't do that one.
Bet you know what you did. Wait a minute. In Every Dream.
Bittersweet was the best one, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah. Bittersweet was
In
great.
the first album, yeah. All right, well, listen, I think all I can say is thank you very much indeed for talking to us.
Thanks.
And continued worldwide domination success, which I'm sure you probably don't want half the time. But thank you, man. Fair play, boys. Thanks.
Cheers.